In a world where global communication is connecting us in many ways, we need to stay connected. Anytime, anywhere, any place. Welcome to the world of Athalos.
Thank you for thank you for accepting mine and Maten's invitation to become an ambassador. It's a great privilege and an honor to have you on board.
Well, that's very kind, and I'm very excited by it because a lot of the principles that you sent through in the in the attachments and in your mail are ones that I do care about. I think ESG in its broadest sense, which is not just the environment in general, but inclusion, which means it's as much about for me, the whole IND, inclusion and diversity thing, is about equal opportunity, not leaving anybody behind, giving everybody an equal chance. And I think in many respects, what's happening with COVID helps highlight the fact that, and by the way, I will send you the memorable quote, but I'm trying to think what to put into the memorable quote. But I think for the longest time now, people have always thought, well, everything around ESG is tomorrow's problem, don't have to worry about it. But actually, it's today's problem because the way things have been driven so far is that people always keep kind of kicking the can down the road, but there's no road left. And we do need to care for those things. And I'm very fortunate in that my wife, who's a very clever lady, last year she completed a PhD, which is all about the role of directors and enterprises in sustainable growth. And that sustainable growth is not purely a CSR thing. It's a question of economic and civilizational survival, and can be profitable. It's not just giving money away. It's investing in more intelligent ways. And recently in the telecoms domain, Capacity Media, who's a company who runs a whole bunch of events in this industry. I'm working with them because they're going to do a conference on sustainability in telecoms and what telecom operators can do to have, let's say, more responsible strategies. And that's largely around consumption of power, because telecoms and everything around data centers consume huge amounts of power. So what can be done to redesign, refashion, rework the whole way everything works in order to consume less power, provide all these wonderful services, but do so in a more responsible fashion. So, these are all things that are really important. And then there's the whole human side, which is about, as I mentioned earlier, inclusion and diversity. But I think that goes way beyond some of the kind of big banner headlines about minorities and quotas and stuff like that. I think it's much broader than that. And I think it's all about, as I said, I think it starts with equal opportunity, because if you start imposing quotas and putting people in positions because of the fact that they're a minority, as opposed to they're a minority but also have talent, then you're setting them up to fail, which is not a good thing either. So it really goes way down to grassroots, and everybody needs to think about how in every little thing they do, they can make it a level playing field, and think about the fact that we'd like, children and grandchildren, great grandchildren still have a world around, in a few hundred years hence. And the way things are going, even 100 years hence is looking like not a nice place to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you touch upon many points that resonate for so many people, myself and Maten included, and we're all on a journey. And I think you've highlighted like telecoms as an example of what they're doing. And I think one of the challenges, and I think also realization needs to happen in due course, that there shouldn't be an expectation that you you identify the world's problems and you feel a sense of responsibility, whether that's personal, individual at your core level, or as a CEO, or even as an organization. And then whether that be manifested through CSR or other aspects, going beyond traditional CSR, that there shouldn't be this expectation, or personal expectation, I guess, that you'll just find the solution. It's a journey. And remember, it's like a PhD. If you haven't studied what the issues and the problems are, you can't be expected to come up with the right solution. You're going to come up with a version of a solution that is appropriate for what you know in terms of your limited understanding of the issue at that time. So I think we need to have more conversations. We need more amplification of all of the broader issues, and then allow people to determine where they're best placed to tackle those issues, either through their companies or their individual, aspect of that, or become purpose-driven leaders. So I think it excites me when I think of it in that context, because it means that, you know what, we've got literally everyone on the planet with a role to play. So if this was an Olympic sport, everyone could participate, and everyone had, it's not about winning, it's about participation. And I think, it lends itself nicely to, you said that, all of the things in the document were kind of resonating with you, or appealing to you. And that's how the program has been designed. It's not specific enough to be saying, well, Carl, if you don't fit the tick boxes, then you can't be on board. It's a mindset and it's a philosophy, but it's also a journey. So it doesn't really matter where you are on the journey. The fact is that you've made a realization and you've understood that you have a role to play, not out of guilt necessarily, but a sense of realization that whether that be, I've got a generation behind me to follow, or there may not be another generation to follow, whatever the kind of thinking might be, you're on a journey. And that's what excites us, that, again, that means it's open to everyone. And I think the two things for Martin and myself in our own journeys, and we come from very different backgrounds, but we've converged at one point, is that it's very much about accessibility and inclusion. Those two things are fundamental. And we often use our children as a barometer in that regard, that what does every parent do? I don't know if you have children.
I've got a son.
So you can understand that whatever you do is about creating the right kind of opportunities for them. And that comes through access to, whether that be good schooling, the right schooling, the right teachers, the right tutors, the right friends and social circle they keep, to keeping them safe, to providing for them, and giving them exposure to the right things and not the wrong things, but also keep making them part of what's happening in society. So whether that be clubs or societies or social network or whatever. So inherently, we're already about access and inclusion. It's just that when we break it down to fundamental core issues, then we need to be more giving in what access and inclusion means for the other people around us outside of our immediate network. And I think with that in mind, that means that this kind of program that we've put together can touch upon many, many different aspects of society, very different components within society as well, address many of the SDGs, but also many touch points in life as well. So whether you're at the age that we're at, where we can think of this as a nice to do, but also a must do, versus someone who's just starting out in life career-wise and thinking, I don't have the time or the energy to focus on anything else other than my life. So there's lots of aspects of this that we can tweak and fine tune. Are there any thoughts or feedback or questions or queries that you have around the program itself? And then we can get into sort of expectations from you, from us, and then what we expect.
Not really. I'd be interested to get a better grip as to, how on a day-to-day basis this will roll out and what the expectations are, because obviously I'd love to help, which is why I'm happy to quotes unquote sign up. I want to make sure that I also meet your folks' expectations. I mean, on social media, I'm not really that active because I've studiously avoided Facebook and Twitter, because whenever I went on, I had essentially it consists
Said
of
what you
people asking for jobs, all the time. And so LinkedIn, I do, obviously, and I do have an extensive network in the telecoms world, and I get involved in the telecom events, so can certainly influence in that fashion. And certainly this event coming up on sustainability, I think, is a big positive step. I also feel that we've got different communities to target. I think obviously you've got business people in full flight in their careers who don't have much time for anything above and beyond making their numbers and the latest P&L, which means getting their attention is going to be hard. However, when you look at the millennials, they even when they're ambitious, they're more focused on quality of life. So, and that's a positive, I think. So maybe there's a more receptive audience there to what's happening with the planet, et cetera, because I think, I read in various places, I don't have all the data to hand, but we're looking at now, this is probably the first generation who's not having it, who are having a worse time than their parents had. Because up until now, after the whole baby boom thing, every generation, it's been a better life, more security, more wealth than the previous generation, and now that's no longer true. So there's something very fundamentally wrong with that. And especially when you see the state of the earth, you've got, and when I travel around, I mean, it's anything from going somewhere in Asia, seeing all this trash in the sea, you got the plastic ocean out there. And one thing that really struck home to me was really dreadful. Last December, I was in Brussels in business. A couple of weeks before Christmas, freezing cold, it was minus something, very Christmassy, Christmas trees, people doing shopping. And I went past one of the monuments there. Just around the corner, there was a small plaza which had been cordoned off. And there were families, and I think they're Eastern Europe or from Turkey or from Eurasia at least, and they were just sleeping there. It was 10 o'clock at night. Kids were playing around. The parents were obviously calling them, come and lay down for the night, and they just had blankets and anoraks and gloves and stuff. But in 2019, which it was then, in a capital city in Europe, there was over 100 people there sleeping in sub-zero temperatures. And I just cannot conceive how that can be true. I mean,
but you'll be surprised, Carl, that this is illustrating how far we have moved in our kind of, I don't want to use the word moral judgment because that's not what I mean, that we've just become desensitized to the things around us, or we've become blinkered, I think is the right word. We've been blinkered about certain things, and everything else just doesn't matter for whatever reason. Again, no judgment here. We've got constraints on our lives, times. We've got expectations to meet for our loved ones, priorities for business. Even adding things like the SDGs and climate action, that's extra responsibility that takes us away from perhaps some of the other things that are very much in front of us. And I think this issue is prevalent in most mainstream societies as well. It's an expectation that will happen in less developed countries. So you justify it by making excuses or coming up with reasoning behind it, that it's poor infrastructure or corruption or poverty or whatever. But in developed countries, your mind boggles, you just can't get your head around it. But just listening to you, it hears that you truly feel it from here. So the task in hand for us in terms of expectation is just to match up what's here with what's here. So if we can work out over the course of the next couple of weeks, the one or two things that really bug you. So it might be, for example, seeing people sleep rough on the street. That might be something that we can look at, might be something longer term, and immediately springs to my mind. If you have, for example, access to, so I'm going to say funds, but I don't mean it in that way. So you have access to resources. So that's some money, some people, or facilitation of, let's say, a building that could house people to sleep. and also run a coffee shop underneath. And there's another conversation around coffee and my passion there. What you're doing is you're using resources that may not be otherwise well used to provide someone with an opportunity to work and sleep and get a good meal. So you've done three things, but also in that you've made them part of society. So you've created inclusion, you've created access, and you've given them dignity. So now you see we're creating a ripple effect. And it might be that someone has a building that's going empty at the moment, and it's available for 3 months or 6 months. And all you're effectively doing is providing someone with sleeping space, but also providing a workspace as well. And it might just be something like that. I mean, that's just like a loose one off the top of my head, because you're putting someone back into employment and you're saying you might not get paid much, or you might not get paid at all, or you might just get paid from the profit that you make. But we're going to support you. We're going to provide a roof over your head, and you work in return. And then when you get back on your feet, then you start, doing the same, as it were. So teach a man to fish kind of philosophy. That's kind of like more stepped and structured. But in parallel to that, or earlier than that, it might be something that you just feel strongly about. Like, for example, plastic bags in the ocean, and you think that's just not acceptable. So you might be able to do something about it, or you might not. But having these types of conversations might help. So we could do a series of conversations and podcasts where you can talk about the issue. And the idea is that you just let your network know. So either live or recorded, you send it out and say, I feel strongly about this. And then through your network, you might reach 100 or 500 people. And one of them might say, Carl, I agree with you. Let's do something about it. And that's it. That's job done. So for us, mission accomplished. Obviously, we'll look at what that looks like. It could be that, like you say, you're not active on social media, but maybe that's what you need to do, but do it in a slightly different way, more strategic. So if it has been about people asking you for jobs, let's convert that and say, okay, I'm not in a position to employ you because I work for a company or whatever it is, but I have a social cause and I want you to sign up for that. And that effectively can be a job description. So it's now not an internship, but it's a job with impact and purpose. They could then become part of the Athalos Global Ambassador Network in due course as well. So that's kind of the vision of where we're going. Thank you very much, Carl.
Well, look,
pleasure
speaking with you, and I look forward to talking with you again soon. And as soon as I've got that quote together, I'll send you that bunch of information.
No rush.
We will stay in touch. Okay.
Thanks, Carl. Speak to you soon.
Take care, Zubair. See you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Welcome to the world of Athalos.